It is another edition of the Matt Barrie Show here on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel. Hope everyone had a good weekend. Hope everyone's having a good start to their week. I'm particularly excited about today's show for a couple of reasons. One, reunited with the great Paul Finebaum, which was going to make everybody happy. Part two, as we sit here August 2nd, it is officially the month where college football begins, and we are a month away to the day from the first full Saturday of the college football season. So we continue to count down and get closer. So let's bring in Paul Finebaum. A month away from the start of the season, Paul. I hate wishing away summer, but man, here we are.
Yeah, you start to dread it at one point, but Matt, now that we're here, I'm not wishing it away anymore. In fact, I wish it was already here coming this weekend. But we can survive 3 more weeks.
3 more weeks until basically our weekends go away to the greatest sport on the planet. I want to start with one of the major storylines in the college football world today. Just when you thought realignment was over, realignment rears its ugly head again. Last week, Colorado, who did virtually nothing in the Pac-12, has decided to leave the Pac-12 just about a decade after they left the Big 12 to return to that league. And Paul, now what you have is, we've seen it. Look, we know how this is going to end up. There's a trickle down effect. When one team leaves, another team gets interested. Said team will have to be connected to their state school, a la USC, UCLA. TV rights deal wasn't exactly the greatest deal on the books. And now who knows what's going to happen in this conference with this latest news?
Yeah, and Matt, I mean, but before we even finished doing this, something could change. So we say that at the front end, but it's easy to pile on the Pac-12 for all the mistakes that Larry Scott made prior, and looks like George Kliavkoff is making now. But it doesn't, there just simply doesn't appear to be a path for them to be relevant in the way that they have been, or probably will be this year when they're still at full strength. And I just kind of had to laugh yesterday when I heard that the best they could do was Apple, which, by the way, there's nothing to sneeze at with Apple. However, the idea that you're going to your presidents and saying, listen, here's what we have, but if we get a bunch of people signed up, you'll get that. That's not how you sell extremely intelligent people, especially, many of them in their 50s, 60s, even 70s, who don't really understand what Apple TV and streaming is all about. Even though they can have it explained 1,000 times, these are people that walk in their house, flip on their cable, and expect to see their school on ESPN or Fox. And when that doesn't happen, they get nervous, and that's why Colorado is gone, and that's why we may see more.
Yeah, and that's just it. I think you hit on it there perfectly, because linear TV is still a thing, regardless of what suits at every television network are telling you. Linear TV is still a thing. Now, I'm not saying Kliavkoff hasn't looked ahead to where it's eventually probably headed. Sure. And he might be a few years ahead of something that's brilliant. But as of right now, the age group that you just mentioned with these league presidents, and what you and I do for a living, and what we know sells during the college football season, it's flipping on linear TV to watch college football. Yeah, and you can't sit to these. By the way, you've already lost. It's a USC league. It always has been. It always will be. You've already lost that. So to come to the room with something that might be 5 years early is not the way to go about this. I think this spooks too many people, where I would be stunned if Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah didn't find their way out over to the Big 12.
Those 3 schools should leave. They should leave immediately, Matt, because trusting this plan is foolhardy. And by the way, this is not something that they came up with over the weekend. This is something this guy has been working on for months and been telling people, hey, it's going to get better. Well, nothing he has said has come out true. And by the way, I'm not blaming him entirely.
No.
Larry Scott, the previous commissioner, turned down a deal with ESPN that would look very good right now, but it didn't look good to him at the time because he was thinking big things. So he's got, I mean, Kliavkoff can only do, he can only get partners that agree, and the big networks have already moved on. And that's why I agree with you completely, Matt. And if these three don't move on quickly, they're making a big mistake. What else is there to hear? I mean, they waited for weeks now, while Colorado finally decided they couldn't wait any longer to hear this presentation. And we both know, because you've got far closer and better sources to these schools right now than I do, that it didn't go over very well, and it shouldn't have gone over very well. And I happen to know a lot about Apple. I have interviewed and spent time, considerable time, with Tim Cook, who is the CEO and chairman of Apple, who happens to be an Auburn fan,
right,
and graduate, and a big football fan. And he's not somebody you sneeze at. He's the most powerful CEO probably in the whole world right now. But that doesn't make this plan any better. This would be a good second or third tier plan, but not a primary plan.
And when you look at, and here's where I think the biggest problem for the Pac-12 is. First of all, it's a conference that's been around since 1900. The Pacific Coast Conference has been such a good conference for sports throughout time, be it in football, most notably, basketball, Olympic sports. It dominates in Olympic sports. And oh, by the way, academically, it's a pretty damn good conference. Problem is now when you're trying to sell this neighborhood of properties, your most valuable football property has moved to another neighborhood, USC. You can't sell the Pacific Coast Conference without USC. They're your most valuable entity. And I know Oregon's flashy and they're with Nike and they've got a good thing going and it's all grandeur up there in Eugene. They're not a USC brand. Washington's not a brand. Washington's good. They're not a USC. They're not a UCLA. And so trying to sell a network with what's left over of your property without USC and UCLA is going to be difficult. That's part one. Part two, if you're Arizona State, Arizona, Utah, and you're looking around, it's like, well, wait a second. Do I still want to hang around for San Diego State, Boise State, or whoever would be a glorified Mountain West? Arizona, as much as I dislike Arizona because of that helmet right there, Arizona's a power in college basketball. And you put them in the Big 12 with Baylor and Kansas, everybody in between, that's a good league. Arizona State has always been a good baseball program and is a football team that can, I mean, Utah's the two-time defending Pac-12 champion. I mean, the Big 12 overnight, if they grabbed these three schools, would be, you could argue, maybe a step ahead of the ACC. And so we're taping this, at 10:06 a.m. on Wednesday? This could all be irrelevant by Friday.
And Matt, what you just said there is striking, because even without those three, but with those three, the ACC is suddenly the conference in trouble. And we can talk about that in a minute, but because I have some pretty strong opinions about where they are and how they got there. But it doesn't make sense for these three. I mean, and by the way, Utah, Arizona, and Arizona State, they're not as big it's not that big of a stretch for them to be in the Big 12. They're not exactly neighbors, but it's not like USC and Rutgers. It's not that big a deal. I mean, at least it's in that part of the country.
Right.
They're not 3 time zones away. And those are all quality. Even in football, you're not going to sneeze at Utah coming to your place, or even the other two have had enough moments. And the pressure then on Oregon and Washington would be immense, because that's not a league they want to get stuck in either. And I don't think they have too many options unless the Big Ten just says, you know what, we're going for broke here. We're bringing in a couple of more and then hope to keep the pressure everywhere else. But we are at a tipping point in college football today that we haven't seen in a long time. We've seen incremental change.
Sure.
Incremental. I mean, come on, Oklahoma, Texas, USC, UCLA. But this isn't bigger and splashier, but it could be more important, because this is literally burying a league. I know people say, okay, enough of the hyperbole. I said the other day, with you, that the Pac-12 is dead. Give it last right. I'm not kidding. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. I say things sometimes for shock, for fun. That is the truth. I mean, this league is dying. And anyone who wants to hang around for the funeral, good luck. But you're not going to have anywhere. Nobody's going to be seeing you in the future if you want to stay there.
No, and it's the conference that I grew up in. I grew up in Arizona. This is the league that I grew up watching and loving. It really is sad when you see what's coming, but it isn't hard. It's not hard. We're not capologists here and football realignment doctors. What we are is realists.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.